The night before Thanksgiving has a way of settling into a home. But that year it pressed in differently. I had just finished a pumpkin pie the way I'd done for decades, steady and simple, when Ashley walked into the kitchen. She stared at the pie a few seconds, then said, "You're planning to put that on the table. It looks cheap." Her tone slid across the room sharper than anything she'd ever thrown at me. A knife was in my hand from trimming the crust. The blade needed wiping, so that's what I focused on. No reply. No argument. Just a cloth against steel. Ashley brushed the pie aside to free space near the counter, reached for a container of frosting, and muttered, "Some friends are coming tonight. Hard to explain this thing if they see it." A palm rested on the edge of the counter, steadying whatever moved inside my chest. It's the same pie I make every year escaped from me, soft but clear. She didn't answer, only slammed the cabinet and walked out. A thud echoed down the hall, as if she wanted the whole house to register her frustration. The pie needed a place where it wouldn't get knocked around again, so it went back to the spot I always trusted. A small notch shaped like a crooked C hid under the crust, my old habit from the years when my wife and I baked together. Nobody ever noticed it but me. Hours passed. The house stayed unsettled, though not from anything visible. When the doorbell rang close to 9, it broke the drift of my thoughts. Maria Hall stood there, holding a small bag of pecans she said she'd bought too many of. She stepped in, set the bag down, and noticed the pie shoved toward the corner of the counter. "Planning to bring that to the fair this year?" she asked. A slight shake of my head was enough. Competing hadn't crossed my mind. Maria lingered a moment, glancing between me and the pie. "I saw a picture on Ashley's page this morning," she said. She posted a pie and mentioned getting ready for the contest. No comment came from me. The only movement was my gaze settling on the crust, the faint ridge of the sea, nearly hidden in shadow. Maria didn't push further. She just wished me a good night and let the door close behind her. The kitchen felt different after she left, though nothing had changed except the thought she'd dropped at my feet. The next morning came earlier than I wanted, though the house hadn't fully settled from the night before. Grocery bags waited by the door, so a run to the farmer's market felt necessary if dinner was going to come together. The place was busy as it usually was before Thanksgiving. People hustled from stall to stall, picking up whatever they'd forgotten. A few pumpkins sat in a wooden crate, and while checking their weight, a woman I'd known for years stopped beside me. "Daniel, are you entering the contest this year?" she asked. "Your daughter's been promoting it all over the internet." Her words landed with more force than she intended. "I'm not competing," came from me steadily. She blinked. "Oh. Well, she's been talking it up like you were both involved." A polite nod was all she got before moving along. Near the spices, Maria appeared with a basket hooked over her arm. "Morning," she said. "They're adding cameras around the drop-off tables this year. A few entries went missing last time." "That right?" She watched my face as if waiting for a reaction. "Thought you might want to know," she added. Another nod. Nothing else needed saying. Believing Ashley capable of something questionable still felt unreasonable, no matter how strained things had become. Once home, the air caught in my throat a little. The pie was gone. Only an empty spot remained where the plate had rested the night before. "Ashley." I called up the stairs. Her voice came back without hesitation. I took it. "You don't need it. No further explanation. No apology. Just that." The counter seemed larger than usual with nothing on it. A breath slowed my chest before folding my arms and scanning the kitchen. Something about the missing pie shifted the balance of the room. Tools had been rearranged, a few jars pushed farther back. Nothing dramatic, but the kind of change you notice when you've spent years cooking in the same space. The supply cabinet needed checking. A box of measuring cups had been pulled from its stack. A whisk hung crooked on its hook. Those small things told stories of their own, and each one added weight in a subtle, unwelcome way. By the door, a thin sheet of paper caught the edge of my boot. The logo of the community fair printed at the top left no doubt where it came from. A form listed the drop-off schedule and a section requiring the participant's identification. The page sat in my hand, longer than it should have. Thoughts drifted toward ignoring everything entirely, letting the day proceed without any confrontation. That inclination had kept the peace many times before, though it had cost me more than I admitted out loud. My phone buzzed with a message from Maria. "If you're free, come by the fair later. Might be worth a look." The screen dimmed before I answered. A chair pulled out as I sat down, letting the tension settle. The kitchen didn't offer any clarity, only more questions. Whether Ashley had taken the pie for harmless reasons or something else entirely, the silence she left behind gave too much room for doubt. Time moved in uneven steps. Afternoon slipped toward evening. The house didn't feel hostile, just misaligned. A coat hung on the hook where I'd left it, sleeve slightly twisted as if expecting me to lift it. The decision came without fanfare. The coat slid on keys gathered themselves into my palm, and shoes found their place beneath me. No dramatic revelation, only a need to confirm whatever had begun shifting the night before. The Phoenix Center looked busier than anything I had expected. Cars stretched in uneven rows across the lot, leaving only a narrow opening near the back. Once the truck settled, a young volunteer approached before the door even shut. "Are you the one who dropped off the pumpkin pie for Ashley Carter?" he asked. A pause formed between us. "She left your number in case we needed to reach her," he added, trying to be helpful. No argument came out. There was no room for it. A nod was enough for him to gesture towards the entrance. People moved in steady lines as I followed the hallway's curve towards the exhibition space. The contest area stood sectioned off with folding tables and labeled shelves. Each entry rested beneath a thin seal and a printed card. Mine Ashley's sat in the second row. The crust's edge pulled my attention first, then the faint mark beneath it. No one else would have noticed that crooked C, but years of repetition had trained my eyes to find it without effort. Before any reaction could settle, a voice drifted from behind. "You see it now," Maria said. She had come up quietly, holding a program rolled in her hand. "Are you sure? It's really my pie." The question felt hollow the moment it left me. She lowered her chin and pointed towards the base of the crust. The C lay there dim under the glass case, yet unmistakable. A step slipped out of me, not from weakness, but from the sudden shift of certainty. Whatever denial remained didn't stand long. A man wearing a badge marked technical support walked over, tablet under his arm. "Sir, if you're worried about something, I can show you the drop-off footage," he offered. "You look a bit unsettled." "Not necessary" came from me before he finished. The offer itself told another story. Someone had suspected an issue even before I arrived. That thought lodged deeper than any proof on the table. Ashley entered the hall a moment later, glowing with confidence. She chatted with two contestants, brushing hair behind her ear while smiling for pictures. Not once did her eyes land on me. The scene didn't surprise me, yet something about watching her move so easily around that pie made the air feel tighter. Stepping away seemed the only reasonable option. A side corridor led toward the staging area behind the main floor. The further I went, the less noise from the crowd reached my ears. A part of me hoped distance might slow the churn building under my ribs. Halfway down the corridor, another volunteer jogged up. "Mr. Carter, Ashley registered you as her support person," he said. Here's your pass to access the judge's zone. The laminated tag was placed in my hand before I could object. Announcements blared through speakers from the stage. Ashley's name rose above the rest, called for the final round. Cheers followed instantly. Standing alone in the corridor with the pass dangling from my fingers, a strange sense of motion carried me forward. Not the urge to confront or accuse, just the pull of something already set in motion that no longer depended on my permission. The volunteers guided contestants through one entrance, while staff filtered through another. Someone bumped my shoulder, muttered an apology, and kept going. My focus narrowed to a single opening near the back of the stage. Feet moved of their own accord. The pass lifted. No one stopped me. A curtain brushed my arm as I stepped through the gap, lowering my head slightly to avoid colliding with the people hurrying past. The curtain brushed my sleeve as I reached the edge of the stage. Ashley's name carried through the room, followed by applause that rippled across the audience. She stepped forward to accept the ribbon, lifting the Pie My Pie with both hands, as if it were her own creation. A judge leaned toward his microphone. "Beautiful work on that crust," he said. "Remarkably precise." My legs moved before any thought formed. A few steps took me into the judge's view. "That crust," I said, "belongs to me." Sound dropped out of the room for a beat. Every head pivoted between us. Ashley's face drained, then stiffened. She forced a laugh. "Dad's joking. I made this." A finger extended toward the underside of the plate. "There's a mark. Look for the C." Her eyes darted downward. She saw it. I saw her see it. The judges exchanged glances. A coordinator stepped toward us. "Let's move to the evaluation room," he said. "We need to sort this out." No objection came from Ashley. She simply followed, clutching the pie as though contact with it anchored her. Staff members guided us through a back corridor into a cramped meeting space. Folding chairs circled a small table, and a monitor waited on a cart. The technical staffer who had spoken with me earlier cued a video. "This is the footage from the drop-off window," he said. The recording showed Ashley entering with a different pie. She placed it on the counter, chatted with a volunteer, then waited until someone turned away. Her hands moved quickly, switching the first pie for mine, sliding the seal toward the edge, smoothing the label. No sound accompanied the video, but the images didn't need any narration. Ashley exhaled hard. Tears followed almost instantly. "You cornered me," she said. "You pushed me to this." A judge responded, firm but steady. "No one forced this. You misrepresented your entry." Another judge reached for the ribbon on the table. "The award is revoked. Your name will be removed from the finalists list." Ashley covered her face. Her shoulders jerked as sobs broke free, yet she angled her body away from me as if shielding herself from the truth. The tension in the room tightened. Volunteers avoided eye contact. I leaned against the wall, letting the cold metal steady the weight in my chest. Saying anything would have added fuel to what already burned hot enough. News of the situation spread faster than any announcement. Voices drifted from beyond the door, short comments, fragments of disbelief, murmurs that rose then fell. None of it surprised me. Community events never stayed private. People talked. They always did. Ashley finally lowered her hands. The streaks on her cheeks stood out, but her gaze wouldn't meet mine. "I just wanted to prove I could do something," she whispered. No reply formed. Words felt useless in that moment. While the judges processed the paperwork, one of the staffers approached me. "You can wait outside if you prefer," he said. "This part might take a bit." My head dipped in acknowledgement. The door opened, and a draft slipped through as I stepped out. It closed behind me with a soft catch. The truck engine hummed while I sat motionless behind the wheel. People spilled out of the Phoenix Center in scattered groups, whispering to each other as they crossed the lot. Some shook their heads. Others looked stunned pie boxes tucked under their arms, as though the whole event had soured. Their reactions made it clear the story had already traveled farther than I expected. My phone lit up again. Another message, then another, then another. Friends of Ashley's filled the thread with accusations. You embarrassed her. You could have handled it privately. She'll never show her face in town again. The wording varied, but the message was the same blame pointed directly at me. A separate notification landed on the screen, Ashley this time. You ruined everything. Nothing else. No explanation. No apology. Only that. The phone flipped face down on the passenger seat. The engine idled while my hand stayed on the steering wheel, but the truck didn't move. Something in me resisted driving away, as if leaving the lot would lock the whole situation into place. A call came through. Maria's name appeared. "Daniel, are you able to get home?" she asked. "I'm on my way." I answered, though the truck hadn't budged. She didn't say more. She didn't have to. The drive home eventually began, slow and steady. Houses passed by in a blur of porches and holiday decorations. Nothing about them fit the mood building in my ribs. When I reached the driveway, the front door was shut, but not fully latched. A faint thump sounded from the hallway as soon as I stepped inside. Then another. Something striking a wall, not hard, but with enough force to make the frame rattle. Ashley's door stayed firmly closed. A zipper scraped against fabric, followed by the drag of a suitcase. Her door swung open. She stood there with a packed bag, face blotched red from crying or anger, probably both. "I need to get away," she said. "You made it impossible for me to face anyone." Her grip tightened on the suitcase handle. "I can't stay here right now. I just can't." Words formed but refused to leave my throat. Whatever I might have said wouldn't have changed her direction. I stepped back so she could pass. She moved down the hall quickly, avoiding even a glance in my direction. The front door opened, then shut, and the echo settled over the house in a way I hadn't heard for years. Not silence, just absence. The kitchen lights came on with a soft click. Cabinets near the baking shelf hung open jars scattered across the counter. Several were missing cinnamon clove vanilla taken without a word, as though she meant to rebuild some version of the pie somewhere else. A deep breath steadied my hands while gathering the items left behind. Each container returned to its place, lined up, capped, stacked. Familiar order restored itself piece by piece. A knock tapped at the door. When it opened, Maria stood holding a grocery bag. "I brought vegetables. Figured you might need some for tomorrow," she said, placing the bag on the counter. Her eyes settled on the disrupted shelves. "They're saying all sorts of things about you over there." No energy remained for explanations. "Did I let things slide too long?" I asked. Maria rested her hand lightly against the counter. She didn't answer, not directly. Her gaze drifted to the pie tin sitting alone near the sink, the one Ashley had emptied the cabinet, hunting for ingredients around. "That pan has been through a lot," she said. Maybe that was her way of telling me the rest. She left after a few minutes, closing the door with care. The kitchen settled again. The pie tin looked dull under the overhead bulb, still speckled with bits of flour at the rim. Water ran from the faucet as the tin dipped under the stream. Warmth from the tap softened the residue quickly. My hands moved on instinct, scrubbing and rinsing without hurry. The flow held steady, not surging or stuttering, just a constant line, the kind that let thought glide along with it. Morning came with the same routine I'd followed for years at the dairy plant. A thermos, a lunch pail, the same boots by the back door. Nothing about those motions hinted at the mess trailing behind me from the day before, though the looks on my co-workers' faces said otherwise. As soon as I walked through the time clock area, two guys from packaging paused their conversation. "Rough afternoon, huh?" one asked, Another added, "Whole town's talking about that pie thing." A nod was all they received. Work waited, and keeping my head down felt safer than giving any of them more to chew on. Tasks that usually came naturally felt off balance. Measurements were double-checked. Valves needed checking twice. Something tugged at me, an unfinished piece of the puzzle that refused to sit still. Every time the thought settled, it shifted again. Break time finally arrived. The metal bench in the break room was cool when I sat. Before opening my thermos, the phone buzzed with a message from Maria. "You should see this." A link followed. When tapped, a saved video loaded Ashley's social media post from the morning before the contest. In it, she held a pie with a lattice top, nothing like mine. She described her own recipe, pointed out ingredients, and gestured proudly at her creation. The crust, the filling, even the color, none of it matched the pie she entered. Maria had written. She deleted it right after things blew up, but I saved a copy. That single piece of evidence slid everything into place. Ashley must have panicked about her own pie failing, then switched it with mine at the last moment. Not out of malice necessarily, but out of fear and ego colliding in the worst possible way. Another call came through, this time from a number I recognized, the contest judging coordinator. Mr. Carter. He began formal and measured. "We found irregularities in your daughter's registration form." "What kind of irregularities?" "She used your social security number to verify her entry. We have her handwriting on the signature line where she signed your name for parental consent." "Parental consent," I repeated, because Ashley was long past needing any. "Yes, sir. Because of that, we're required to file an incident report. It involves personal information, so we have to escalate it." He kept talking, explaining protocol, but the details blurred. My legs carried me toward the loading dock, where a row of crates offered a place to sit. The coordinator's words washed over me, calm on the surface, heavy underneath. Once he finished, I understand. The call ended. The hum of machinery filled the distance. An email notification came next. "Ashley?" The message opened with a wall of text. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was under pressure. Everyone expected me to show something good. You misread the situation. Please tell them you misunderstood what you saw." Line after line, she framed herself as overwhelmed, misunderstood, pushed by the world around her. The plea buried near the end stood out. "I need you to fix this for me. Just say you allowed it." A judge had attached a copy of her registration documents to the earlier call. Her signature sat on the line, meant for mine. Not forged poorly, not rushed, deliberate, confident. Reading everything left a hollow thump deep in my ribs. The truth had been in front of me for longer than I admitted. A coworker poked his head out of the warehouse door. "Daniel breaks over. You coming?" The email closed. Phone slipped back into my pocket. Standing took more effort than usual, but the body moved anyway. Steps echoed down the corridor leading back to the production floor. Nothing in the routine had shifted, but something in me had just enough to notice the change. As the warehouse door swung open, the last sentence from the coordinator circled back. "We're required to hand this case to the center's legal department." Those words stayed with me as I walked, not loud, not soft, just steady enough that they didn't go anywhere. By the time I got home from my shift, the porch held a stack of envelopes wedged against the doorframe. One bore the Community Fairs logo. The letter inside confirmed what I already knew: Ashley's award had been revoked, and added a request that all sponsor items be returned immediately. The envelope slid onto the kitchen table. No reason to read it twice. Hours passed without much noise from anywhere. I sat in the living room with the lamp on hands, resting on my knees, trying to keep my thoughts from circling the same drain. When Maria knocked later that night, the sound startled me more than it should have. She stepped in holding a container covered with foil. "Leftovers," she said. "Didn't want them going to waste." She set the dish on the counter, then noticed I hadn't turned on the TV or started any chores. "You've been sitting here a while. Are you thinking about filing a report to protect your information?" A long breath left me. I kept telling myself staying quiet would make things simpler. Maria leaned a shoulder against the doorway. "Silence is still a choice," she said. "It just lets someone else steer for you." Her words didn't push. They simply settled. After she left, the letter on the table drew my attention again. This time the contents deserved a closer look. The registration form listed Ashley's phone number under my name, then my phone number written under hers, as if she couldn't decide which story she needed to maintain. Her handwriting sprawled over the consent line, signing as me, and the ingredient list claimed the pie came from the Carter family team. That phrase alone made something click. The contest waived certain checks for group entries, including ingredient verification. She hadn't just switched pies. She'd used my name to step around restrictions meant to keep things fair. A folder sat on the counter holding everything from the past few days, screenshots, messages, the saved video showing Ashley's original pie. Gathering them into a neat stack didn't take long. The papers felt heavier than they should have, not from weight, but from the truth they carried. The truck engine turned over without hesitation, almost too cheerful for the kind of errand it was about to escort. The community center's offices stayed open late during the holiday week. A few cars dotted the lot when I pulled in. The building felt half asleep, with only the front desk lit. The receptionist lifted her head. "Can I help you? I need to submit documentation related to an incident from the pie competition," I said, placing the stack on the counter. She flipped through the pages. Her expression tightened. "This is significant. Give me a moment." Her fingers moved across the keyboard, entering notes, scanning attachments, creating a digital file. She didn't rush, but she didn't dawdle either. Something about her focus told me she understood the seriousness. When she finished, she looked up. "We'll need Ashley Carter to respond formally. This moves the case into a different category." Notifications buzzed on my phone as if on cue, messages from Ashley, one after another. "You're betraying me. You want people to hate me. You could have protected me if you actually cared." The accusations stacked quickly. None surprised me. One message remained unread for a long minute before I opened it. Her desperation bled through every sentence, yet not one line mentioned accountability. A reply finally formed. "I'm not betraying anyone. I'm keeping what belongs to me." The words sent simple and final. The receptionist returned, holding a small slip of paper. "This is your acknowledgement," she said, passing it across the counter. "We'll process everything according to policy." Her tone wasn't harsh, just matter-of-fact, exactly what the situation required. The next morning started with a call from the community center. The voice on the line stayed formal, almost rehearsed. "Mr. Carter, we're notifying you that the documentation has been forwarded to the city's legal department. There's evidence suggesting misuse of personal identification. No surprise came, only a steady acceptance." The representative continued explaining that Ashley had been instructed to submit a written statement. Her participation privileges were suspended pending review. When the call ended, the phone buzzed again, this time with notifications tied to Ashley's accounts. Comments poured onto her recent posts, some cruel others mocking the kind of storm the internet never hesitates to unleash. A sponsor she'd collaborated with sent an abrupt email announcing termination of their agreement. One of her close friends called me soon after. "Did you have to take it this far?" she said. "You know how sensitive she is." My breath held steady. "I heard what happened. You could have kept it private," she continued. Silence on my end lasted until she seemed to understand no argument would come back. "I guess you'll do whatever you think is right," she said before hanging up. The plant hadn't changed much when I arrived for my shift. Machines droned, people moved through their tasks. Yet something in my chest felt less weighted. Not joy, nothing close, but a kind of room to breathe. Work filled the hours without complication. By the time I drove home, the sun had dipped low. A small paper bag sat leaning against the front door. Apples. Maria hadn't left a note, didn't need to. The house felt calmer than it had in days. Thanksgiving sat just ahead, and cooking offered a rhythm I trusted. Flour dusted the counter spices lined up neatly, and the familiar bowl came down from the cabinet. This pie wasn't for a contest or a stage. It wasn't to prove anything. It was simply meant to feed whoever wanted a slice. While stirring the filling, the phone buzzed again with a notification from the community center. Final decision: Ashley Carter suspended from all competitive events for 2 years. Record of infraction will be retained. The spoon stilled in my hand long enough for the mixture to settle. Then the motion resumed, steady, circular, unhurried. The oven warmed as the crust formed beneath my fingertips. The scent rising from the spices felt steadier than any thought in my head. For the first time in a long while, the kitchen carried a sense that didn't lean toward chaos or conflict. Guests arrived just past 6. 2 of my late wife's former co-workers came through the door laughing about a pothole on the drive over. The neighbor's nephew bounded in behind them, clutching a board game he insisted we try. Maria appeared, last coat tucked under her arm. The table wasn't crowded, but it wasn't sparse either. Chairs scraped lightly as people settled. The turkey had finished resting, vegetables steamed on a platter, and the pie cooled by the window. When it came time for dessert, I brought it over without a word. Maria reached for the knife, cut the first slice, and looked up with a subtle nod, soft but sure. Conversation wove itself easily among the group bits of old stories mingling with new ones. The house carried life without strain. No one mentioned the contest, the scandal, the fallout. Gratitude didn't need a speech. It lived in the simple act of sharing food. The empty seat at the end of the table remained untouched. No explanation was necessary. Absence has a shape you learn to recognize without staring at it too long. As plates filled and refilled, I caught myself watching the way people passed dishes, how they checked in on each other with small gestures. The noise never felt overwhelming. If anything, it balanced the space. The pitcher of water had dipped low, so I stood, reached for it, and topped off the glasses around me. The motion felt easy muscle memory mixed with a quiet acknowledgement that the world hadn't stopped turning. My hand steadied the pitcher above one last glass. The water flowed in a clean line, neither rushed nor delayed, and the conversation carried on behind me as naturally as breathing.